On Lamed Zayin Beis 37b, 4 lines to the bottom of the page. Amar le Rav Ashi le Rav Kahana. Okay, so yesterday we were discussing Hedger and Staraf Isser and Tam Kicker. Basically, we concluded that the rabbi's opinion is that the source of Tam Kicker is from Nazir, and the extra word of Mishras.
There's one extra space. You can tell me.
They are not of the opinion that Hedger and Staraf Isser. Rabbi Kiva holds that Hedger and Staraf Isser are Nazir and Bachatos, and therefore becomes an exclusive category. And Tam Kicker is learned from the fact that Torah prohibits using non-kosher vessels. Clearly, the only problem with that is taste. And there we see that Tam Kicker, forbidden taste, forbids kosher foods. Okay. Amar le Rav Ashi. So at the bottom of Lamed Zayin Beis, Rav Ashi says to Rav Kahana, Elahod Tanya, Mikol Asher Yosem Igefnei Yayin, Limud al Isurei Nazir Shemitzdarfen Zemza. There is the pasuk tells us that you can combine. So we said Nazir is prohibited in a bunch of different grape products, and if you combine the grape products, you violate a prohibition. See, so asks for Rav Ashi, I don't understand. In other words, if I eat a sandwich that has bread and wine, or I dip my bread into my wine, and the bread is considered connected to the wine, and I eat the whole thing, I'm chayav b'kazayas. So I don't understand. If that's the case, then certainly if I mix pits and peels and wine and I eat it and there's a kazayas, I for sure would be chayav. If even non-Nazir prohibited items such as bread is counted as for the kazayas, so certainly if it's a prohibited item, it should for sure count to the kazayas. The Gemara says, Amar Lei is a difference. Heter is b'vasachas. It's iser afilu b'zacharza. Says as follows: if I'm eating. If I'm combining, let's say, so the bread has to be dipped in wine. In other words, you're eating the bread and the wine at the same time. However, if you drink wine and then eat grapes, that amount could be combined even if they're not eaten simultaneously. So you finish one product, you eat the next product, they also combine for the same share as long as you eat them within the time usually that it usually takes to eat
the same product, the like product. Right?
What do you mean?
Like a wine and a grape, that sort of thing. Those two or two different things that aren't related but are both forbidden.
No, two items that are forbidden to a Nazir. So
okay. It could be two items. Okay, but just in equal amounts, and they combine up or whatever they combine up to the total amount.
Right. Okay. So heter isser. So when you're combining permitted items like bread to isser to wine, that's b'vasach, that has to be eaten at once. It's still isser, but if you're combining, page position is 37b, last line of the page.
Thank you.
And we'll be moving to 38a in a moment. Okay. It's still isser afilu b'zeh acharza. If you're combining, let's say, grapes, peels, pits, wine, vinegar, etc., even if you're not eating it simultaneously, you also incur a violation. From Shimon, top of the page, the less late siruf, he does not hold of. Shimon does not hold of the concept of shiurim. He holds that you'll be chayiv even if you don't eat a shiur. All you need to do is consume some amount of it, and you'll incur a violation. So if that's the case, then obviously you're chayiv for eating a small amount. So why do I need a pasuk to tell me that I can combine grapes and wine? I don't need any combination according to Rav Shimon. So what is the verse teaching us? This is the famous Rav Shimon, which we've seen many times before in the Masechta, that you only become a Nazir if you accept all three prohibitions. According to the Rabbanon's opinion, if let's say you accept I'm a Nazir and therefore I'm going to be prohibited from drinking wine. According to the Rabbanon, you're a Nazir and you're prohibited with all three prohibitions of Nazir, right? Wine, here, and tumah. However, according to Rav Shimon, Shimon says that Shimon says you'd be prohibited. You're only prohibited once you accept all three together. If you accept one, you don't become prohibited. You don't become a Nazir. Amar Bavu, Amar Belazar. Ravu says the name of Belazar. Kol Revius Shabbatara Ein Heter Mitzdaraf L'Isser. Chutz Mi Revius Shabbanazar. Sure, Amar Torah Mishras. This Rabavu seems to be quite a repeat of the previous Rabbi Yochanan. So again, talking about Heter Mitzdaraf L'Isser. So Rabavu says, in general, with the Revius, when there is a prohibition that requires you to consume a liquid, the shear, the measurement is the Revius. Except with regard to Nazir, that in general we don't say Heter Mitzdaraf L'Isser. You need a full Revius of prohibited substance. Except by Nazir, that if you added in some water, that would also count. That would say it's Heter Mitzdaraf L'Isser, and you incur a violation. So the Gemara says, what's the difference between his opinion and the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yochanan is how we started out the whole sugya. He's the one who taught us Heter Mitzdaraf L'Isser. The difference is Rabbi Yochanan. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, we say Heter Mitzdaraf L'Isser even when you're eating a liquid, such as dipping your bread in wine. So we say that the bread, now it's because you're eating it, so it becomes a question of a kazayas, and the bread counts toward the kazayas. However, according to Rabbi Elazar, it's only Heter Mitzdaraf L'Isser is only true when you're drinking a liquid. So you wouldn't count the bread with the wine. If you added orange juice to the wine, then we would say Heter Mitzdaraf L'Isser, and you're drinking it. But if you're consuming it by eating it, using bread or something else, then we do not say Heter Mitzdaraf L'Isser. Okay, now the Gemara goes through a couple of interesting, couple of different scenarios where Revius, that measurement, it's 3 to 5 ounces, is considered significant. Amr Belazar, Esther Revius saying there are 10 different Revius. V'nakar of Kahana biyadeh, if Kahana taught Chamesh Samakta v'Chamesh Chivarta. There are 5 Revius that are red, meaning they're either wine or blood, and 5 that are white, meaning they are either oil or water. Chamesh Samakta, 5 red Revius. No, so briefly, we'll go through them. We'll explain in a moment. Nazir, somebody who's a Nazir. Pesach, somebody who's making a Pesach. Shahiru, we'll see what that means. That means to give a halachic ruling. The Mikdash in the base of Mikdash, Umesu, and they died. So let's explain each one. Nazir, the amount of a Nazir, that's a reference to Revius Yayin the Nazir. A Nazir needs to drink Revius. Isa Pesach. What does this mean? Somebody who makes a Pesach. The Amar of Yehudah, Amar Shmuel, Arbakai Salo Tzar Sheheben Kedei Revius. The 4 cups of wine pass overnight. You need to have Revius. Shahiru, someone who gives a halachic ruling. What does that mean? Shas Revius Yayin Al Yara. If he drinks a Revius of wine, 3 to 5 ounces of wine, he should not give halachic rulings. The Mikdash in the temple. What's that? What does that mean? Shas Revius Yayin Nechlas Mikdash Chayiv Misa. Somebody who drinks a Revius of wine and goes into the temple, it's Chayiv Misa. He's liable for capital punishment. Obviously, this is not administered by a court of men. Umesu, and they died. What does that mean? The Tanya we learn if you have the blood from 2 different people, that equals a Revius. Revius of blood of a dead person is Matam Ba'al, even if it doesn't come from one person.
I see the number 1 here, Rabbi. That's usually a footnote reference to a source, perhaps.
Perhaps. It might be reference to a pasuk.
I was just curious. I'm always curious if it doesn't explicitly mention the location of the pasuk for the training wheel crowd out here in the cheap seats. It's always nice to identify the source if it's there.
Yeah. So the idea is that even if you have the minimum shear, the minimum measurement of blood, even if it comes from 2 different people, 2 different dead people, it's still enough to be matam ba'oil to cause tumah in a, through a building, through oil. It's complicated exactly what that means. Okay.
Right.
The Chamish Kivar, the 5 white Revius, and they are Chalas Nazir. I'm sorry, we'll go briefly. Chalas, the Chalas of a Nazir. umitzayra and a mitzayra, shenif salu, something that became possible, and b'Shabbos. Okay, so I'm sorry, challah is 1, nazir is 2, mitzayra is 3, shenif salu is 4, Shabbos is 5. What does that mean? Chalas, the chalas, the bread. Which bread is that a reference to? Revius shemen l'chala. 1 second. Okay, so if somebody, 1 second. Okay, basically, if a person brings a carbon toida, brings 40 loaves of bread, 10 of which are chametz, 30 which are matzah, 3 of each type, and on top of all those breads, he has to bring at least a revius of oil. He brings a revius of oil for 2 different types of breads. He brings a revius of oil for each. Total is a half a lug, but it'll be revius for each type, for 2 of the 4 types of breads. Okay. Nazir, what's the reference to Nazir? Revius shemen lenazir. When a Nazir brings his concluding sacrifice, he also needs to bring a revius of oil. Revius mayim l'mitzara. When a mitzara is becoming pure, so you have to take a measurement of water from a spring. How much is the measurement? It's a revius. Shenifsalu, something that becomes possible. What's that a reference to? The time we learned, okay, this is one of the Yudches Gzeros. If anyone remembers that Gemara in Shabbos, one of the more difficult Gemaras in Shabbos. I think it's stuff Yudches. If somebody drinks a revius of beverage that is tamei, typically it's going to be a sheni l'tumah or less. That, unless it's one of the rare exceptions that it is a rishon tumah, that person becomes tamei. So it's another example of a revius. If you drink less than a revius, you do not become tamei. Okay. B'Shabbos, on Shabbos, what's that a reference to? The time we learned B'shar kol mashkin b'revius, kol hashayfkin b'revius. If a person is carrying a liquid on Shabbos, haitzah, the violation of haitzah occurs when you carry at least a revius. Okay, so now the Gemara wants to try to find additional scenarios that have significant, where revius has significance. The suleka, are there no more than these 10 rules? Va'ik, we find revius noten liyadayim la'echad va'afil l'shnayim. A person from the tilas yadayim, a person needs to use at least a revius, but it could be used for 2 people at once. So the Gemara says, "But plukta loy kamayri." Since this is a debate, it's a debated question. So therefore, we preferred not to give it as an example. In other words, the other opinion says that you need a revius is for each person. So the Gemara says, "Va'ika." We have another example. Hayamevi paili shalcharis v'neis l'tachatzi lug mayim min akiyar. Second. Rabbi Yehudah revius. Okay, this is when a woman who is getting to, we're preparing the waters of Saita for women. So we have a debate here. According to one opinion, it's a chatzi lug. According to the other opinion, it's according to the other opinion, it is a revius, whether it's 3 or 6, 3 to 5 ounces or 6 to 10 ounces. So Gemara says, well, there's a debate. But plukta like Kamari, we preferred not giving examples of things that were subject to debate. Next attempt. Va'ika kama mayim neisin l'taycha kol shehu. Reb Zakkai, I'm a revius. Okay, this is a scenario where a person is trying to daven. Forgive my language. There's a sort of a chamber pot, a potty in front of him, and there's a liquid excrement. So if a person wants to be able to daven there, he has to pour in at least a little bit of water. Reb Zakkai, I'm a revius, needs to pour in a revius of water. So Gemara says, and it's another example, plukta like Kamara, we're not talking about things that are debate. Okay. Gemara says, V'ika mikvah. There could be a mikvah that's a revius mik. What does this mean? So obviously a mikvah for a person has to be able to hold a full person. the requirement for a mikvah is typically considered at least 400 to 500 liters, and practically speaking, that we will not build a mikvah less than 1 cubic meter, 1,000 liters, 300 and something gallons. However, technically speaking, if you're building a mikvah to tovel kalim in, to put a vessel in, it's even as much as a revius. Except that at some point the rabbi said that people might get confused, and they ended small mikvahs for vessels. If you use a regular size mikvah. So they ended that practice. Okay, I'm just so now the Gemara is continuing explaining the Mishnah. So one of the things we saw in the Mishnah is ve'ein chayev ad sheyochel min hanovim kizayis. Okay. We'll go with Taisus over here. It's a little bit different. The article explains it doesn't fit perfectly in the current text of the Gemara that we have. Okay. The Mishnah says that you're not the nose doesn't violate the prohibition unless if he's eating grapes, he eats a kazayas. Now we had a Tanakama and the Mishnah Achrayna. The Mishnah Rishayna. And the Mishnah Rishayna says until you drink a revius. So the Gemara says Tanakama Okay, so as follows. According to the final version of Taisvis, the debate is as follows. According to everyone agrees that if you're eating grapes, you eat a kazayas of grapes. The debate between the rabbis and Rabbi Kiva now is when you're it's hard to describe, when you're consuming wine, are you drinking wine or are you eating wine? And is the shear a kazayas or is it a revius? So Tanakama lemedam l'kol yisur nazir l'shtia. Rabbi Kiva siva nov lachin ve'shel yochel machi l'kazayas af kol yisur and kazayas. So the Mishnah Rishayna says when you're drinking a revius. And Rabbi Kiva says when you're drinking, you're eating a kazayas. And therefore the measurement is a kazayas. Presumably a kazayas is a little bit smaller than kazayas is roughly 28 cc, which is the measure's a little bit lighter. I imagine it's probably a little bit less than a revius. Okay. One second. Okay, so we saw at the conclusion of the Mishnah, a Nazir has one of 6 different products, or really anything, but at least the 6 main categories, right? It's wine, strong wine, the vinegar of both products, grapes, raisins, pits, and peels. Okay, what we found interesting was the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that says if you're eating pits and peels, you need to have 2 peels and 1 pit. Otherwise, you're not chayav. So if you're eating pits and peels, you're exempt until you eat both categories. Did this have to do with the flavor that we talked about before? What? This has to do with the flavor of it before? Well, why is it that he has exeris because it says chartzanim and zag. Chartzanim is plural, zag is single. Okay. It means you have to combine the 2. Okay, turn our bottom. The Rao is taught he cannot consume grapes, whether they're fresh or whether they're raisins. Tell you that you're chayav on each one on its own. This teaches me with regard to all other isurin in the Torah. Makan shahu min echad vehin shnei shemis. I'll just read finish the Gemara. Okay, so basically, let's say it outside and then we'll go through it inside. You have an interesting thing. So typically speaking, let's say somebody's eating. I don't know if this is a thing. I guess I'll have to make it up as it goes along. He's eating 3 non-kosher foods at the same time, but they're all in the same category. Okay, so for example, he's eating, let's say, non-kosher pork, a hot dog, which is made out of dog meat, I believe, right? Still, is that a thing? And horse meat. and horse meat. So he's having the meats of 3 different non-kosher animals. It doesn't really have to be 3 different animals. It could be the same animal, but it's 3 parts of the animal. What does it mean 3 parts? It means 3 shemas, 3 titles. I.e.,
3 different organs, let's say.
yeah, something like that. 3 different cuts of meat. Something that a person would give 3 different. For example, like raisins and grapes is really the same thing. It's just a different title. If the Torah forbids grapes, obviously the Torah forbids whether they're fresh or whether they're dried. And yet we find the Torah needs to specify dried and fresh. And the lesson there, what the Torah is teaching you, is that if a Nazir is consuming grapes and raisins at the same time, and a guy says, I'm warning you, the Torah says, don't eat grapes and raisins, he's chayav once for grapes and once for raisins. And the same is true of any other non-kosher item. If a guy is consuming a large quantity of a single item, he'd only be liable once. In order to be liable twice, he'd have to have a new warning for every kazayas. However, but if he's eating items that have 2 different names, then it would be considered. Then you'd be chayav twice, once for each name. Obviously, we can interject because Purim is coming. The mitzvah mishlach manas, right, is to give items that are considered 2 significant items. How do you define significant? Number of different shuvas, but certainly a very plausible differentiation would be names. So it's certainly a question if you can give a top and a bottom of a chicken, right? That's sort of more nuanced. A chicken cutlet and a drumstick, probably, yeah. It's probably two separate things, But okay, these are more the halachic minashay, exactly what's in the category. But this would certainly be a potential possibility to differentiate what would be considered two types of foods. They do not need to be 2 different brachos. That's a common mistake. Okay. So you can't eat raisins and fresh grapes. That you're chayav once for each category, once for raisins, once for grapes. From here, I learn with regard to all other prohibitions. Just like grapes, there are 2 names, meaning one's raisins, one's grapes, even though they're effectively the same item. You chayav twice, once for each one. So any other thing, if you eat lard and pork, you'd be chayav twice, even though they both come from the same animal. Okay. 1 second.
Right, page position, please.
Been halfway down, first one line is chamra.
Thank you.
Okay, basically, if you were having old wine and new wine, that's enough. So it'd be like sort of like sweet and dry wine, we call it must and dry wine. So that's also enough to be considered two different items, 2 different names, and therefore you'd be chayav once for each one. If an Nazir was consuming both beverages. Okay. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, "Ochel chartzen." If you eat, I should have enough time to get to the Mishnah. Okay. Ochel chartzen like a shtayim. Ochel zag like a shtayim. You eat chartzen. What's chartzen? What's chartzen? Anyone remembers?
As soon as it drinks.
What? That's bein abinim according to one opinion. The easiest answer whenever asked a question is chartzen is a machlokes. Right? But the simple explanation is that chartzen is the peels and zag is the pits. So again, now the Torah says you cannot eat one of 6 different categories of grape product, and of course it really includes everything. Okay. Says Abaya, when you eat chartzen, you get malchus twice. Achal zag like you eat the pits, you also get twice malchus. Achal chartzen v'zag. Let's say you eat both. Like the shalosh, you get 3 times malchus. Why is this? Because he holds there's 2 prohibitions of a Nazir eating grapes. One is eating a specific product, eating right. It's wine, old wine, the vinegar of both products, grapes, raisins, peels, and pits. Eating any of those incurs a violation. And there's another violation of mikol asher yasa megefen hayayin lo yisachel. Anything that leaves a grape product you cannot eat. Sort of a collective lav. So therefore you get malchus twice, once for the collective, once for the specific. If you eat 2 items, so you get malchus once for each specific and once for the collective. Rava says no. Because anything that leaves a grape you shouldn't eat is considered more of a collective lav. Therefore, you don't get malchus for it. You only get malchus for what each individual item you consume. So Moshe Rapapa has the following question to Abaya. Rabbi Lozer says, Nazir shayyashoysiyayin kol yom, ein chayav alachas. If a Nazir was drinking wine a whole day, he's chayav malchus once. Amrullah, they told him, I'll taste. Don't drink. V'hu shayis, and he keeps on drinking. Chayav akolachas v'achas, he's chayav for each warning. Ochal anov mlachem, he was consuming grapes, moist, fresh grapes, v'yaveshim and raisins, chertzanim peels, v'zagam pits, and at the same time, v'sochat eshkel shel anovim v'shasa, he squeezed grapes into a cup and he drank the grape juice. Like a chumash, he gets five times malchus. Again, so what did he do? He ate grapes, he ate raisins, right? He ate peels, he ate pits, and he drank wine at the same time, 5 times. Get malchus 5 times. Hold on a second. According to Abaye, how many times you get malchus? 6 times, because you get 1 collective malchus for consuming grape products. Like a chumash, you should get 6 times malchus. Achas amikol asher yasa. Once because of eating. Once for eating grape products and once for each one specifically. So Gemara says you're right, ton of a shire. There's actually more than 5. You get malchus more than 5 times. And we it should have said more than 5 times, but we skipped this one, so we skipped writing the 6th one. So Gemara says my shire, the high shire. If you want to say that you skipped one, meaning that 5 is not an exclusive number, you always have to give an example of a 7th. In other words, as follows, because if the alternative possibility is 6 versus 5, then isn't there a message going on why it says 5 over 6? But if you can give me an example that there was a 7th or an 8th malchus that was possible that wasn't written, so then it sort of makes sense. He only gave you 5 of the potential 7, but the 5 number wasn't intended in being an exclusive category. Okay, so Mara says my share the high share. What else did he leave? Did he forget to justify telling me that it's not an exclusive category? So the Gemara says, Shayar L'Yachal Dvari. He also incurs a violation of L'Yachal Dvari. What does that mean? So he violated a neder. L'Yachal Dvari is a generic category. Anyone who violates a neder gets malchus for L'Yachal Dvari. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, that's not considered extra. Kikatani, what were the malchus that he identified? He was talking about things that were unique to Nazir. But L'Yachal is not unique to Nazir, it's true of any neder. Okay, so the question still stands. Why did he say 5 and not 6? Okay, so Amalei Ravinim for Ezekiel Ravashi, V'hashayar de Ben Abinim. We have another thing he forgot to add. He could have added Ben Abinim. What's Ben Abinim? Either it's the dregs, or it's these small tiny grapes that don't grow. Maybe there's a third opinion also. So that could have been another example. He could have given you 5 plus Ben Abinim. Now, okay, so according to Abaya, it makes sense. According to Abaya, we have 5 plus 6 plus 7, plus the 6th one of Kosh Yosim and Gefenayai in the generic category, any wine product you get malchus for, on top of the specifics, and a 7th one, which is Ben Abinim, if a person eats a kazai's worth of dregs. However, and now the question is flipped. Now it's a question on Rava. Rava, that according to Rava, why do you only get malchus 5 times? You should get malchus 6 times. Ben Abinim is included. Rapapa here is one who asked.